to take action against those who carried out the abuse, while listening carefully to the victims and survivors.
We've all listened to the heartbreaking stories from Pennsylvania of the unspeakable crimes perpetrated by people within the church and then obscured to protect the institution. It's a story that was all too tragically familiar to those of us here in Ireland. As you've said, there can only be zero tolerance for those who abuse children or facilitate that abuse. And we must now ensure that from words flow actions. Above all, Holy Father, we ask that you listen to the victims and survivors, and we know that you will do that, and that you will bring to it the attributes of compassion and humility and honesty that we all here feel that you embody as Pontiff.
Let's get more on this now from Robert Gahl, who is from the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross and joins us now from New York. Thank you so much for joining us, Robert. The Pope is going to meet with sex abuse survivors later today. How important is this meeting in terms of relaying the sorrow of the Church over the sex abuse scandal?
This meeting is crucial. Pope Francis has said numerous times that it's so important to listen to the survivors of sexual abuse. And we're right now in a moment in the Church when we've heard beautiful words from the Pope of commitment that there be real change to overcome this cover-up of these crimes. And yet now many people are waiting for action from the Pope. In fact, the U.S. Bishops' Conference has asked the Pope to follow through with supporting their bringing about more transparency and accountability to the lay faithful. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes up with his meeting with the survivors and also how he speaks about this in the press conference in the return from Ireland.
Now, the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross works to equip priests who will lead the Church in the 21st century. I'm interested because numbers are falling in the Church, attendance and the abuse scandal has obviously impacted the reputation of the Church. How then do you bring in this younger generation of priests when you have a generation who are apparently skeptical now of the Church?
Well, it's an excellent question. What we're trying to do with our formation of these young men who are aspiring to the priesthood is to, first of all, make sure that they are equipped properly with all the tools and with the personal maturity in order to face this great task, but also to inspire them with an idealistic, the ideals of their vocation so that they can be the solution, that they're really looking forward to being that, not counting just on their own human efforts, but also on the grace of God. Pope Francis is going to visit the Marian Shrine of Knock tomorrow morning, and they're also counting upon the help from heaven in order to overcome this crisis so that the Church might really shine forth with holiness.
A lot of talk has been bandied about around transparency in the Church, because not only were there so many priests who committed these crimes, but there were also obviously a lot of people who knew about them and didn't say anything. So how then do you bring transparency into the Church?
Exactly. That's right now, certainly in the United States, the most grievous part of this crisis has to do with that cover-up and the complicity, including among bishops. This is especially evident with the whole fiasco of former Cardinal McCarrick and his having to resign. So what needs to be done are really good management skills and practices, best business practices, which include bringing in the lay people who are also responsible for the Church, so that they be involved also in the selection of bishops, that these things not be hidden away through secret letters of recommendation, but that the lay people be involved in vetting those who are going to be our bishops. This is already called for by canon law, but unfortunately it isn't always implemented. Right now, Pope Francis speaking to this World Meeting of Families, it's going to be crucial to say the family, normal families are responsible for the Church, just as the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph are patrons of the Church. And so if we have this transparency with the laity, with families, with lay women, with mothers of families who are active in the Church, having a real role in the selection of bishops, then we'll be on a step towards real reform.
Thank you for that. That's Robert Gahl from the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross in New York. The US is cutting more than $200 million in aid to the occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The US State Department says it's redirecting the money to projects elsewhere, which are in accordance with US national interests. The US has already withdrawn $65 million from the UN Relief Agency for Palestinian refugees.
United States of America and the US President Donald Trump's administration is blackmailing and putting pressure on the Palestinian people. We were completely expecting it under the policy of blackmailing and threatening that the United States of America practices, and in the context of passing what is called the deal of the century.
Well, for more on this, Mohamed Alam